Good morning. Welcome to Baby Story Time. Today we've got a very special story. Today's story is borrowed from the Project Gutenberg Library, and it is The Sleeping Beauty. You might have heard of it before. This story is by Anonymous. We don't know who wrote the story, but the story is in something we call verse, and it rhymes, and it's very fun. And you might not know some of the words, but that's okay. You can always look them up after the story time today. I should also mention there are some beautiful illustrations in this version by Walter Crane. Let's jump on in, shall we? The Sleeping Beauty. Long, long ago in ancient times, there lived a king and a queen. And for the blessing of a child, their longing sore had been. At last, a little daughter fair to their great joy was given, and to the christening feast they made, they bade the fairies seven. 7 fairies. The fairies 7, who loved the land that their child might bless, yet one old fairy they left out in pure forgetfulness. And at the feast the dishes fair were of the reddest gold, but when the fairy came, not one for her, so bad and old. Angry was she, because her place and her dish had been forgot, and angry things she muttered long, and kept her anger hot. Until the fairy godmothers their gifts and wishes gave, she waited long to spoil the gifts and her revenge to have. One gave the princess goodness, and one gave her beauty rare. One gave her sweetest singing voice, one gracious mien and air. One skill in dancing, one all cleverness, and then the crone came forth and muttered angry still, and good gift she gave not, but said that in the future years the princess young should die by pricking of a spindle point. Ah, woeful prophesy! But now a kind young fairy, who had waited to the last, stepped forth and said, "No, she shall sleep till 100 years are past, and then she shall be wakened by a king's son. Truth I tell, and he will take her for his wife, and all will yet be well." In vain in all her father's court the spinning wheels forbid, in vain in all the countryside the spindles sharp are hid, for in a lonely turret high, and up a winding stair, there lives an ancient woman who still turns her wheel with care. The princess found her out one day, and tried to learn to spin. Alas, the spindle pricked her hand, the charm had entered in, and down she falls in death-like sleep. They lay her on her bed, and all around her sink to rest, a palace of the dead. 100 years pass, still they sleep, and all around the place a wood of thorns had risen up, no path a man can trace. At last a king's son in the hunt asked how long it had stood, and what old towers were those he saw above the ancient wood. An aged peasant told of an enchanted palace where a sleeping king and court lay hid, and sleeping princess fair. Through the thick wood that gave him way, and past the thorns that drew their sharpest points another way, the king's son presses through. He reaches the guard, the court, the hall, and there, where'er he stepped, he saw the sentinels and grooms and courtiers as they slept. Ladies in act to smile, and pages in attendance wait. The horses slept within their stalls, nay, the dogs about the gate. Ruff, ruff, ruff! The king's son presses on into an inner chamber fair, and sees, laid on a silken bed, a lovely lady there. So sweet a face, so fair, was never beauty such as this. He stands, he stoops to gaze, he kneels, he wakes her with a kiss. Mwah! He leads her forth, the magic sleep of all the court is o'er. They wake, they move, they talk, they laugh, just as they did of yore. 100 years ago, the king and queen awake, and tell how all this happed, rejoicing much that all had ended well. They hold the wedding the same day, with mirth and feasting good, the wedding of the prince and sleeping Beauty in the wood. Thank you all for joining me today. That was a fantastic story, and I had a lot of fun with you. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.